All right, we're live now. Okay. Hey, how are you doing? I asked this question before, but we didn't get a chance to converse. But yeah. Please go on. If you'd like to, you can talk about who you make sense to you. What is
Is that a
that
car or
noise?
a truck?
Sorry, just let me check.
Take your time.
Seems to be fading away now. So great. Yeah.
Yeah, so my name's Steve. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist in California. I've been practicing for about 10 years, working specifically with children, but also elderly. And I have a private practice in the Bay Area. And yeah, my focus has been somatic therapy. That's what the focus was in my graduate school program. And yeah, I've been treating that population for a while now. And also, I'm published in a couple psych journals, so that's fun. And I'm
That's
just wrote a
amazing.
paper that with my colleague Stephanie, we presented it at the Psychology of the Other conference in Boston, and so that's going to be going for publication pretty soon. Yeah.
Great. Great, that's amazing. Okay, so what sort of motivated you to do what you're doing right now? Like, was it something that you experienced in childhood, or was it a natural pull toward dealing with people? And like I think the kind of job that you do, it's more like you're like the engineer of the mind, and you like help sort of people fix their problems and yeah.
It's probably my own trauma. I mean, that's like kind of the cliche, like every therapist. And I think specifically for me, it was hard to find myself in books I was reading around mental health. And because I'm both like South Asian, but also Guatemalan, it was hard to find books around multiracial awareness that had that kind of flavor about talk about masculinity from like from a blended kind of like from those parts of the world. And so I had to get a lot of I had to learn a lot about mental health and then extrapolate it to how it would apply for me to understand why my family dynamics were the way they were, which made it easier
Yeah.
to work with different populations because
Yeah.
they had a lot going on in their world. But the better I could work on myself with things around masculinity or post-colonialism or trauma or racial trauma, mental health, then that was easier for me to kind of understand my clients and their worlds, especially when I was working with children, a lot of boys of color.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense. No, I think boys of color are generally left behind and are rarely a part of the conversation that usually ends up happening. Whenever it comes to post colonialism. I don't think boys and men of color are discussed as much. So I definitely uh, relate to that pull toward contributing, and I think that's so. The other thing is, I think the only way that a therapist can actually be a good therapist or a counselor is if they've gone through a lot of shit themselves, because a lot of people just no, I think like you can't sell empathy on the market, that's something that has to come from your own sort of from your own past. I mean, people think that just because they've done degrees that it sort of makes them capable of providing a safe space,
Mm.
which I don't think that they can. But they, I think a lot of people have sort of smeared the name of therapy and counseling because they just think that, okay, if I've got like these degrees, like, ducks in a row, I'm fine, I'm good to go. But it doesn't work that way.
I agree. I think there's this like phrase that therapists aren't taught; they're kind of forged through their own trauma,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that resonates a lot with a lot of my colleagues that I work with or network with a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So okay. Um, so what has been like something that you personally had to work through in your practice that sort of was maybe revelationary to your own understanding of your own self?
Wait, is there another way you can frame that question? Like,
Of
what's
course,
the
of
biggest
course.
thing? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So, like, let's say you were dealing with a client and it caused you, you know, there was a light bulb sort of moment in which you realized a lot of new things about yourself, like a new perspective or something that dissolved an old belief that you were clinging on to, but you didn't know that you were clinging on to this old belief. And, having a conversation with your client sort of helped you, get to that light bulb moment a lot faster. Like, wow, okay, this is what I was missing.
Yeah. Working with children, and there isn't any one child per se, but working with children has been a lot more insightful to me. And I was in Hayward, which is close to Oakland and San Francisco, in elementary schools, like transitioning kindergarten to sixth grade. And I was working with many Latino boys, Latinx, and many black boys. And the consistent theme for them was helping them feel empowered. And they often needed me to make myself smaller. They needed to be better
Ah,
than me in many things.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they were often replaying their own themes of being dominated over. And so they needed me
yeah,
as a man to just be generous, compassionate, and patient with them. And they needed to like lord over me in many ways. And then once they saw that they didn't need to do that for me to earn my respect or my compassion, then they were able to be more vulnerable and gentle with me. And then they could actually dive into anxiety or their depression. And then they didn't feel this hypervigilance to always be aggressive or hyper masculine. And that
yeah,
revelation for me, because I had seen it so many times in so many black and brown boys, that I realized that that was a theme of them being socialized. And a lot of the work that they did just by me being a brown man, being patient with them was many times the intervention was the relationship itself. And so that's something that I had come to in the very first years of practicing, like the first 4 years. And yeah, I couldn't replace that.
wow, that is insane. Yeah, I mean, I definitely am able to connect the dots because, like, I think so. I think I was reading this book, The Heart of Trauma, and it said that the antidote to depression or the things in general, mental health issues, the antidote to all of them is safety. And I think, I think, like you just said, that they needed you to sort of, display yourself as being at their level or lesser in order for them to feel safe. I think we develop these coping mechanisms that become, that sort of override the thing that you would find in safety, which makes sense, right? Because you don't feel safe, and that's why you've developed these coping mechanisms. And so the only way for someone to make someone feel safe is to target their coping mechanisms and sort of tell them that it's okay, and then it's up to them to do the other half of the work and see that, yeah, okay, I'm safe now. Like, the coping mechanism seems to be working. Otherwise, they're just stuck in this cycle of learned helplessness that no matter what they do, they're still going to be victimized. And
Mm.
I think coping mechanism. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
your
keep going.
thoughts? Oh,
Um,
okay, yeah, no, so
yes.
yeah, sorry, sorry, sorry. Please go on.
No, I mean, so yeah, like learned helplessness is a very cognitive behavioral therapy term. Um, and that CBT can be very effective for some people because people have distorted thoughts. And I like what you said about safety, and because um, that's more of a body sense. Like someone might feel or
Yeah,
know logically they're safe, like there's no one in the room, I'm by myself, I'm safe, but their body might still
Yeah,
feel hypervigilant because their
absolutely.
body is
Yeah,
still stuck in a fight flight trauma state. Even though there's no one in the room, they're still ready for things to hit the fan. And the
yeah,
thing of working with boys of color was they're so accustomed, and children in general, because of childism, no one respects children or their agency or autonomy. When you give child centered play therapy and you're centering the lived experiences of children, you're letting them direct the activities and you're letting their nervous
yeah,
systems kind of guide them. And the opposite of trauma is play. And
yeah,
so and
yes,
so often that's hard because especially for children who have gone through a lot of trauma, who have been humiliated, and I would say boys of color who have lost a lot of dignity because of things like the school to prison pipeline, where there's a presumption that they're up to no good, or they're stereotyped as dangerous or in need of being punished. Um, they're often already going to school in a fight flight state, hyper vigilant, that
yeah,
they will be that they will be policed in many ways. So many times, the first times I would interact with these boys, their bodies are so like they're ready to hit the fan that a lot of the very
yeah,
first work is them realizing that they have agency. And I think that's one of the very
yes,
first things that they lose is that internal felt sense of how do I want to direct this connection that I'm having with this man, and whoa, he's letting me take the reins. That's
yeah,
agency
yeah.
to many of them.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. That is so, and that's so relatable because, I think these things sort of carry forward in life. Even like childhood is the time you're from, the formative ages. But even when you're older, like in your twenties, there's still a lot of formative sort of testing going on with respect to how you're adjusting to the world, and I think the number one belief a kid would have about what they're doing is that nothing I like learned helplessness comes from the sense of feeling nothing I do is gonna save me. So the coping mechanism that they've developed is like that's what they believe to be true. Like I must need to be in this paradigm of my coping mechanism in order to feel safe. But when even that doesn't work, then it's just it's like the entire domino comes knocking over. And so the only way, like you said, is to soothe the thing that they hold, like the belief that they hold about the world, and sort of to validate them. Otherwise, it's just, a form of learned helplessness episode all over again.
Right. And I would argue that learned helplessness would be like a dorsal vagal shutdown, which is like a freeze state.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the thing that I think parallels feeling that helplessness is school prepares you to just submit to the status quo of society. That I can't change society,
absolutely.
that people are just going to always be over on top of me, and I don't have any agency to
Yeah,
change the world, which is
yeah,
that
yeah.
scaffolding when we connect it to you know, autocratic societies or totalitarianism or submission to authority figures.
Yeah, no, 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 I completely agree. I mean, I think school is like one of those places where it's like Lord of the Flies, except the leader is a teacher who's apparently
Right.
been ordained by the system that okay, you're fit to be a teacher, but they don't really look at maybe they're not fit to be a teacher, and it's not like it's a completely totalitarian form of governance, right? Because you've
Yeah.
got 50 children and nobody has chosen that teacher, but now the teacher has like all the power over them for the
Yeah.
duration of time that they're
You
in
have to ask them
school.
permission
Yeah,
to use the bathroom.
yeah, exactly. Oh my god, yes, that exactly that sort of sums it up. Like, I mean, literally, they've got control over our bodily functions. That's just so
Yeah.
weird. Um, so
When to
there
get
was
up,
this.
when to use the bathroom,
Yeah,
when there's
yeah,
recess, where you
yeah,
sit.
yeah.
And that's very opposite of like liberation psychology, or what Paulo Freire has written about of pedagogy of the oppressed, that education is supposed to be liberatory. It's supposed to
Yeah.
give you critical consciousness so that you can connect what's happening in history and space and time that has created the certain conditions for why we have to sit in this chair right now to learn this material, as opposed to
Absolutely.
you determining what you want to learn and how that connects to society and larger dynamics. And how this is written about in Paulo Freire's work, how it's more like a banking system. In the schools, they just deposit information that they want from you, as opposed to education being a co-participatory event where the
Yeah.
students also can bring their knowledge into the arena so that new knowledge can be co-created as opposed to just top-down deposited. That's very
No,
that's a
that
lot of that's very radical though.
um, I mean, it is radical in some senses, but if you look at the way that schools function, they're sort of radicalizing children themselves, aren't they? I mean, they would call it normal, like, okay, this is how you
Well,
adjust to the society.
into capitalism, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, please go on. I'm not fully aware of that
Oh
string
no
of
no,
thought.
the idea that schools are socializing children into what it means to enter a capitalistic system.
Ah, right.
Right, to not be a
Yeah,
free
yeah,
thinker,
yeah,
to not be a free thinker, but to
yeah,
submit your agency to another authority.
yeah. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Wow,
And so the
I never thought about
scaffolds
it that
happen
way.
very early on,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
no one ever challenges the status quo, and then that learned
yeah,
helplessness that you were sharing becomes this kind of to use gamer terms, the default settings that becomes part of the personality of the person, of the individual. Because children, especially kindergartners, transitioning kindergartners, first graders, are very, very curious. Their minds have not been pruned yet to think into these rigid ways, categories that society wants us to think in, whether it's gender or race or what kind of politics, capitalism or socialism or what have you, anarchy. But then the school system is very much the very first places. They're called sites of shaping. Parents is a site of
yeah,
shaping, school is a site of shaping, and it shapes our character structure.
yeah.
Slowly,
No,
but yeah,
yeah, no,
different sites.
that makes a lot of sense. Like, that's school is the place where you first form the beliefs of what it means to be a citizen of a society in which all others are equal, and then there's a governing authority, which is supposed to be democratic, but really is not, because I mean, in school, like, the teacher has all the power over like 50
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think, okay. So it's all about school sorts of, uh, hammering in a sense of scarcity, that there's not enough to go around, and there will be people who get good grades and there will be people who don't. Especially, I mean, I'm not sure if uh, a lot of schools grade on the curve, but it still seems to feel that way at the end of the day, that it's like a zero sum game, that someone has to come first and someone will come last. So ranking, definitely, like ranking
Hierarchy.
children on the basis of the, yeah, a hierarchy, exactly, which doesn't
Mm.
make sense. Like let's say all of the people got like 100 marks, and then they're like, no, that means that the test wasn't all that good. So they're selecting the test in order to first create the hierarchy, and then sort of dismissing the claim that the test itself was biased.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
It does, because it needs to maintain the rigid structures of yes hierarchy, but also gosh, I'm losing my train of thought. That manufactured
That's fine.
scarcity,
Take your time.
that
Yeah,
manufactured
yeah,
mindset, the manufactured
yes,
consent
yes,
into a scarcity mindset that perpetuates a starvation economy, because that starvation economy, that scarcity mindset, is our inherent features of capitalism, which is like capitalism being the offspring of colonialism. And hierarchy is the
Yeah,
opposite of
that
it. In
is true.
systems theory terms, holarchy. And holarchy is the idea that it doesn't necessarily need to be a pyramid with someone at the apex, the top. It can be a circle, a holarchy, where now we're
Yeah,
getting into systems theory. And systems theory builds off the idea of the swarm. And the swarm is there isn't necessarily one individual that is represents everything. Like there's no president or pope. It's a swarm. It's all of us doing
yeah,
our and like our hive mind mentality, which is very much anarchical politics.
yeah. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think. Okay, just give me a sec. I'm just processing
Take
what
your
you
time.
said. Yeah. um, I think the biggest sort of the common denominator in all of these cases where you know where boys are growing up, I think the number one thing is that they've already assumed that the boys consent to being subjected to the kind of system that already exists, and there's this thing. It's like a prejudice to its children called childism, right?
Right.
uh, where you just assume that children don't have the autonomy to choose what they want, and therefore something else, a system, must be chosen for them. And in the very act of sort of subjecting them to a system that you've built that they haven't actually consented to, it sort of brings up these emergent patterns of intra like children bullying themselves and then the teacher being in on it, because that you form these hierarchies, right, in like you just described with respect to the capitalistic um, analogy. They form this hierarchy, and obviously if someone's at the top, someone's at the bottom as well. And because the system is built in a way or designed in a way that the teacher always favors the ones who are in the top 50 percentile of
Right.
the 50 top 80, like uh, they get favored and the rest of them don't. So there's this internal hierarchy, like you said, an internal hierarchy forming amidst them, and that's obviously going to lead to status games and a lot of bullying. And I think that's, do you concur?
Absolutely. And I think we call it like that's also the formation of like group dynamics of in group and out group, cool, uncool, different statuses like the jocks, the nerds, the like I said, the cool people or the outcasts, the marginalized people, and and especially in the age of like adolescent identity formation, teenagers, and so that
Yeah,
consent that is never given to participate in these dynamics, it's just a way that like I said, the sites of shaping begin to shape our identity, and then we begin to see the racial dynamics. If like different schools are more like kids racially segregate themselves at lunch, and so the school becomes a microcosm for like the state or the country.
yeah. Yeah, that's. Hey, so thank you for saying that. It just led me to connect with this idea that poor people are poor because they choose to be poor. But if you look at that hierarchy that's formed in schools, it's not like the children who are at the bottom rung of the ladder chose to be there. It's just that the system subjected them to certain
Oh yeah,
rules and like these really petty laws that sort of categorize you into something different just because you have a certain set of choices. And that really that really resonates with me, with the equivalent of the state saying, oh no, we need poor people, otherwise economics cannot survive. So it's
yeah,
all like we're basically brainwashed to be in a zero sum, to view everything as a zero sum game.
right. I would yes, I would argue that's absolutely true because that scarcity mindset also bleeds because of capitalism into like things like erotic capital. And erotic capital is your social capital, how you are perceived in terms of attraction. And when we talk about children and adolescent and how they're viewing themselves as sexual beings and their own, and I don't use the word sexual in terms of like sexuality, sex, but also creativity, your jouissance,
Yes.
your libido. And if your libido
Yeah.
and jouissance has been scaffolded and, as I've been saying, shaped into certain belief systems, and if you've been socialized as a female, as let's say a black or brown person, then where you fit into those rigid structures and how you are shaped within high school has implications for that you will carry on for the rest of your life as you enter these larger systems because the school becomes the microcosm as we said earlier. And so that's where you start to realize your rank, to use kind of like more psychology terms of like where you fall on the pecking order of a racial body hierarchy, which is why girls, when they reach their first period, menarche, their depression, I'm sorry, not depression, depression and anxiety spikes because they start seeing themselves as objectified within a patriarchal society, a patriarchal cishet white male society. And so, in order for them to survive, their erotic capital, they say, is taken from them unless they subscribe to these kind of sexist patriarchal worldviews. And boys realize that if I want to have my erotic capital intact, my social capital, I need to participate within masculinity, specifically a patriarchal masculinity that will double down on trying to control women's bodies. And so it's insidious. Whether we're talking about, elementary age or older age.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so there's a lot going on in here, which is that you've got a system which conditions men and women to be in certain roles, and then men and women end up being a product of that system, and then uh, the system blames everything on men and women for being that way, and it's not necessarily. Does that make sense?
It scaffolds. It scaffolds. It
Scaffold.
builds on itself. It builds on itself.
Ah,
And then and because it's part of the structure, it's structural violence. And structural violence, you can't point to any one person to say they're perpetuating structural violence. It's structural. It's like we can't say this is the reason this person's homeless. There are several factors that have contributed to this social inequity. And that goes back to like social stress theory. And social stress theory is that there are certain things happening on the macro level of analysis, the meso level of analysis, the family level of analysis that kind of perpetuate an environment that leads to a predisposition to depression, that leads to a predisposition to homelessness, that leads to a predisposition to drug use. And so trauma. And when people are beset by so many
yeah.
factors, these are called risk factors in community mental health. When there are so many risk factors, it makes sense why someone will turn to drugs to alleviate their distress because the system is not supporting them. And because of all that structural violence that is baked into the scaffolds.
So this reminds me of this thing in sociology called the fundamental attribution error, where you over attribute someone's success to the system and under attribute their failings to the system. So it's like if you're winning, then the system allowed you to. No, and it won't be like despite the system you won. It'll be you won because of the system. And when you fail, oh, you fail because of your own personal
Oh,
misgivings, not because of anything the system did to you.
right.
And
Oh,
and and
interesting.
so yeah, so yeah. So it's like whatever happens, like all the positive things that you do get absorbed uh, as being like a joint effort between you and the system. And anything wrong that you do, the system sort of just distance themselves from you. Yeah, we don't really know this guy,
Uh,
and then basically over attribute your failing to yourself, even though the system has been a big part of it.
Wow. That reminds me of like private schools. Private schools will not accept students unless they're doing really, really well, so that they can maintain the illusion
Yeah,
that every student they have does well because of them. And if a student is not doing
yeah.
well, they will not accept them for the next academic calendar so that they can maintain those high scores, those high averages, to maintain that image of always being successful and producing only successful students.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas
So
public
this
schools
bring
have
me,
to accept everyone.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's true, isn't it? This reminds me of this one quote by this. Was he in? I think he was an operations researcher. So this guy, no, I think he was a statistician. Stafford Beer. He said that the purpose of the system is what it does, and so from whatever we just discussed is it's basically based on the optics of it. Like we should look good regardless of what we are from the inside, like the systems, and so it's all about managing your image, like risk management of your image, and
Right.
so they just absorb all the good things about the students that they chose to be, um, filtered them out to be so that they get good grades or good ranks or whatever metric that they're rubric or
Mm.
metric that they're judging students by, and then just calling, we called shots on this, and this is the result of all of our efforts together, when in reality that's so it's just the optics, right? They're managing the optics, and it's
Yeah.
basically a facade. Yeah.
Yeah. And Jungian psychology, they would call that the persona. It's just the mask. Persona is just Latin for mask.
Yeah.
And people become very persona identified. And when you identify through persona, that can be a real, very problematic because there's no substance there. That's just, like you said, the illusion.
So that sort of brings me to another, and this is more of a question, is that we all that like grow up into these scarcity mindsets. Like we're all sort of depressed and anxious about there not being enough for us, and being constantly confused whether or not we'll be able to make it as what the system told us to be. Like they told us that, okay, it's your job to become this because we've given you the scaffolding, but in reality, the scaffolding is the thing that holds us back from being the thing that they sort of brainwashed us to be. So it's
Right.
like this really elegant trap, and I'm not saying that this was necessarily built as a trap, but at the end of the day, again, quoting Stafford Beer, the purpose of a system, what it does, and it just goes unbridled in the direction of brainwashing us to sort of churn the same old stories that everyone else has been living in, unexamined, and yeah,
What's your framing question?
it's the question is that, um, do you think the scarcity mindset is can be explained from just the systems that churn us out as good citizens or good students or good whatever, like just adding a good there for no reason, just because we seem to be obeying the system.
I'm gonna kick myself for not remembering who quoted this. I want to say Ashada Shakur, but I could be mistaken. The system's not going to give you the tools to dismantle it. And I need to look it up to see who said that exactly.
Oh god.
And yeah, you can correct me, please.
No, that's fine. I'm hearing it for the first time, and I really like the
The
quote.
system's not going to give you the tools to dismantle it. And and so the system is working exactly as it should to maintain the illusions that if you just submit to it, you will live a fulfilling life, which is not what's happening.
Yeah,
Who did you find? Who said it?
yeah. It's Audre Lorde said that the master's
Ooh,
tool will never dismantle the master's
Audre
house.
Lorde. I stand corrected.
Yeah,
And she's awesome, very awesome too. And that being said, after the 1960s and you had a lot of free thinking radical thought, hippies running around, people burning the flag. The government, U.S. government, is very aware that we can't have this happen again. The college kids are too educated, and so where
Oh,
there was a systemic effort to make education less affordable, and to fight to push back around developing critical consciousness for the student body, because the student body was very properly rebelling against the government going to war with Vietnam, and then the Gulf War, and then the Korean War, and maybe those are the same. I don't keep up with every war, to be honest. But and so as we see it now, the attack on education that's happening is absolutely by design, because we don't want to. The state does not want to help you have that critical consciousness. And so that being said, um, the very first step of any intervention is awareness. Period.
yeah.
Just being able to place yourself within space and time, and understanding the forces that have attempted to, and have successfully or unsuccessfully, pruned why you think the way you think. And
Yeah,
why do you have
yeah.
such an emotional investment in certain ways of thinking? And that's like Jungian 101 shadow work, as we call it now, shadow work. That's become very popular within pop psychology. Um, because when you do shadow work, Jung would say you have to look at the prima materia, and prima materia literally means feces, poop, shit. Because no one wants to look at their shadow because it is ugly, but it exactly is within the prima materia that you get what you need to that is missing within the philosophy to create the philosopher's stone for individuation. Because it's when I can turn the inward eye and be like, oh, vulnerability is really hard for me. It's hard for me to access. Why do I look down on people of lower class? Why do I wear skin whitening products? Or why am I judging myself as a man? What does that mean? And what forces have curtailed why I think what a man should be, quote unquote? Um, and how shame historically has been used to curtail libido, to curtail energy. Because that's what happens to kids. If we're going back to kids, they are shamed within school systems, and you can think about your own experiences in schools from deviating and experimenting with different ways of being. And so shame is like one of the number one tools, and that's, I believe, Bell Hooks. She has that quote, that it's the number one tool used by imperialism to that causes paralysis. I'm paraphrasing. And so, in that the very first lessons of that shaming, I would argue, is our first teachers, our parents. But that's one side of shaping. The other side of shaping is schools, and that's why it's so hard to deconstruct and do shadow work, because it's the emotional investment and how painful it is to deal with, to do shame work, which is exactly that prima materia that holds a lot of that alchemical gold when we're talking about retrieving parts of ourselves that we have disavowed to survive, that we have severed from
Yes.
ourselves in order to survive the encounters with these, I would argue, destructive systems.
Yes, no, I completely relate with that, and so this sort of brings me to this one thing that I had, I was thinking about is that wherever the word "should" comes in, that
Judgment.
yeah, judgment, right? So it's a good citizen should do so and so things within the society because that's what is normal, and anything else is abnormal, and if you look at the eligibility criteria for disorders in the DSM-5, right, diagnosticians and statisticians manual for mental disorders, it's always at the end of the day, someone having narcissism, right? And this is just an example, right? If someone has narcissism, they won't be classified as having narcissistic personality disorder unless and until their social functioning is being affected by
Here,
it.
yeah.
So that means that there's this baseline assumption that everything that happens in society, the rules, the laws, and the patterns that emerge on a global scale, all of those things are perfectly normal and absolutely not dysfunctional. They're all functioning to facilitate whatever is. I mean, they're doing it in a picture perfect way, which is not true. So if you have a disorder, it just means that you're not conforming to the society and others are being bothered by it. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something dysfunctional in the way that you are being. And so, just to add another point to that, is
Right.
that you talked of shame, right? And I think that's like the number one tool that comes in when we're talking about someone being disorderly or someone having mental health problems and therefore they're unable to participate in the system. And it's like they've pathologized being different.
Yeah. That
And
reminds me
and
of Gabor Mate's book, The Myth
yeah,
of
please.
Normal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who wrote
Gabor
that
Mate.
book?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Gabor Mate wrote a book
Oh,
called
Gabor Mate.
The Myth of Normal.
Right. So I haven't read that book. If you'd like to say something, please go
Yeah,
on.
it's just the
Yeah.
skinny is that there is no it's just there's no normal. It's a fabrication social construct, usually used to control others.
Yes. Yes.
And when we think about what's normal is, what the definition of normal, it's usually research-wise white cis het male.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely.
which
Absolutely.
is yeah. And so
Yeah. Like.
hmm, you're not going to see yourself represented in a lot of the research. So you have to do what I did, which is extrapolate and kind of cobble together your own theories as to why the status quo is the way it is. And some people do that, and some people just submit because it's easier to submit to the system and participate in a sick society than to actually turn against the tide. I think it was
Yeah.
Krishnamurti, I think, he said, "What what good is it to be well adjusted to a sick society?" And I'm paraphrasing that too. You can fact check me on that. But what good is it to be well adjusted when the society itself is
Yeah.
narcissistic? And that's something that Carl Jung also talked about when he talked about collective neurosis. Collective neurosis is what he argued was happening with the Third Reich, where it's like these people are all under the spell of some mass delusions, and they are collectively projecting their shadow onto others. Whether
Yes.
it was people of color, Jewish people, disabled people, people with neurocognitive, uh, neurodivergent people, because this is a big problem, I think, and I've said this before. If I can't deal with something, a defense mechanism is projected out.
Yes.
Projected. That's great,
Yes.
and that's okay. That's going to be my problem. But when it becomes social policy, when I have the power of the state behind me, and we as the state can collectively project that onto another party, and we can enforce that projection materially with weapons, guns, then it becomes a collective problem. And we see that
Yeah.
happen, when we talk about things like Orientalism. And Orientalism, as defined by Edward Said, is this projection that the East is feminine, weak, docile, savage, and it's our moral duty to go colonize them, to bring them
Yeah.
the Bible, and to give them logic, because they are also illogical, and these are also matriarchal, matrilineal societies, and animistic, and that's just we're not doing that. And because the West historically can't deal, the Occident can't deal with its own complexities, multiplicity, vulnerability, emotion, it pushes that onto someone else.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
that's kind of the beginnings of colonialism, which yields into a capitalistic worldview, which becomes the seedlings of hierarchy and dominator culture.
Yes. 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 So it's like you have these individual people who might or might not believe that, right? But everyone thinks nobody believes, but everyone thinks everyone else believes in a particular thing, and so they just go by, just to not feel alone. They partake in activities that sort of confirm that they're part of the crowd, but is actually evil in some senses. It's like
Yes.
it's
That
like
and
you've
that,
got
that
you've
sorry, cut you off. Go ahead.
oh yeah. So it's like you've got people in general, like an individual person is lacks the tools and the authority and the sovereignty to be proper evil towards someone else, but join a bunch of them together, let a bunch of them cruel people come together and form their own system, and now their intent and their will is now systemic cruelty, which is sustained for long periods of time, and that's when they become evil upon being joined as a part of a system.
Yes, and what you're alluding to is what Carl Jung argued is that individualistically, people good when they get into a group, they get they get archetypal possession. And when you get archetypal possession, you will do some shady things because you will hide behind the collective group. And you will think you are morally okay, but the group as a whole will do some really awful, heinous things. And that also goes back to what Hannah Arendt was arguing in The Banality of Evil, that evil is not done by really monstrous people. It's usually people just following orders, just the status quo. This person said to do that awful thing. That's why I did it.
Yes.
And they can absolve themselves of moral responsibility, what you said, sovereignty, agency, and just give that to someone else. Give my power
Yeah.
to that person. He said I should do it. He represents the state. Therefore, I'm going to go do X, Y, Z awful things now, and
Yes.
I'm absolved of all accountability. And
Yes.
that ties into group mentality, and that's what Carl Jung was talking about. Hannah Arendt were talking about, but also Wilhelm Reich. Reich was talking about. He wrote several books, The Mass Psychology of Fascism. That when I submit to regimes, submit to strongman politics, I get co-regulation. I feel good.
Yes.
What you alluded to as belonging. And if I wear this same outfit as that person and that person, that uniform, then I feel unity. And then let's
Yes.
go fuck some
Yes.
shit up. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse right now, but I'll feel that
No, you
belonging.
can. Please feel free to. Yeah.
Yeah, that self-regulation, that co-regulation of belonging will help absolve me of any personal anxieties that I have within my body, but it comes at the cost of again relinquishing my autonomy. And so it gives me co-regulation. Co-regulation, my nervous system is calm, but it also gives me a false sense of safety. And that's what I argue with my co-writer Stephanie about. That's a lot of what masculinity has become. Especially dominator culture, masculinity has become a lot of submission to state authoritarianism because of the co-regulation it offers.
So it's like they're giving away their autonomy because they don't want to be held personally responsible for it. They're
It
giving
feels
away
good.
their autonomy. Yeah, it feels good because they feel a sense of belonging, right?
Yes.
And
And fake sense
so so
the false sense of safety.
yes, yes. So because they don't want to be held accountable for their own actions in the sense that
Hmm.
they're sort of grown up to be these dysfunctional adults who don't want that responsibility of having to self-reflect on their own actions, they just outsource the autonomy to like a big
The
tribe
state.
and just
Yeah.
the state or whatever it could be anything, right? It
It
doesn't
could be
matter
anything. The
necessarily have to be
army,
yeah.
the football team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, go ahead.
And because they feel like they belong, um, they feel like okay, this is like a good sort of trade-off, right? Like it's a good trade-off we did, and yeah, so they'd rather pay the price to be autonomous, like they just give that their autonomy away just so that they could feel like they belong. Also, the added benefit for them is that we don't have to be held accountable because we had orders and we were just following orders.
Right. Yes. That you're connecting like Hannah Arendt to Carl Jung, to Wilhelm Reich, and to like connecting with the psychopolitics of what I would argue is connected. I'll add another nuance to it. Uh, Rites of passage. When societies don't have rites of passage to make sense and meaning making of going from child to adolescent to young adult, society will fill those in
Yeah.
for you. And so it becomes like,
Yes.
I know adolescent, it's like sleeping with someone, having sex. But sex doesn't become this thing of union, it becomes this dominator thing. I scored. It uses a lot of dominator language and gamification language and sports language, which are inherently just metaphors of violence and conquest. Anyway, they become metaphors of rape culture.
Ah, okay. Yeah, could
And
you
when
could
you,
you expand on that a little bit?
yeah, sure. So, if you look at football, for example, football is a very interesting sport, and I mean like American football, not soccer, but like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's all about uh, the taking over someone else's land and overpowering someone, but through the use of force. And it becomes this invasion kind of thing. And you have the defenders, and you have the people grabbing the ball and going for and making runs for it. But I scored yesterday. I banged her. I'm gonna go to the gym and I'm hitting this muscles. I'm you fired a good shot. You made a great fire. You fired a good remark at yesterday during that meeting. So there, in this language we have is inherently phallocentric, and we have a culture that is inherently phallocentric, that is always about one upping someone. We're reiterating a lot of those hierarchical dynamics that you and I discussed in the very beginning. The hierarchy that
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
is better than someone else, the most valuable player, the and how that makes sense within that we no longer have rites of passage within society to make meaning of why I'm I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm getting older, then I get married, then I do this and I do that, and society gives us those meaning making structures through submission to, I would argue, fascist logic. Whether it's like giving my power away to the state, giving my power away to the army, because whether it's joining a gang or joining a military force, it's very similar. They both shave your head, they make you dress a certain way, they make you say their slogans, they tell you who the opposition is, they give you a lot of in group mentality. And if I have in group mentality trauma because of what happened in high school or in elementary school, it's going to feel good to submit and to be part of something. But again, I lose my identity in that process. And if I have masculinity wounds, which I would argue all men have as a virtue of being socialized under patriarchy, then it's going to feel really good. But it comes at the expense of perpetuating harm towards women because women are seen as objects to validate that I am a man. Because they become trophies, which goes into ideas of like this is called centerfold syndrome. Centerfold syndrome is a concept that happens to men who they view women as trophies, objectification, usually porn addiction, and they have a hard time connecting with their own emotional vulnerability. And if I never have to really deal with centerfold syndrome as long as I have other men to bond with homoerotically, because I also have to perpetuate the idea that I'm cis het, and so I can't ever show that there's vulnerability or affection towards men. I can only bond with men if I'm putting women down, and it doesn't necessarily need to be women. It can be the things that represent and symbolize women, like sports, footballs, the cheerleaders, like scoring. The scoring becomes a metaphor for sleeping with others. And so it's not when men connect with other women, it's not necessarily about the women. It's so that they can report to the men that they quote unquote scored there too, and so women become a placeholder for the phallus. But that's going into Lacanian psychology now. But the point that I was making very very beginning is that society lacks rites of passage. That's kind of something that's kind of gone away, and society's kind of filled in the blanks with that with others, so, rituals. Yeah.
Would say that, because the term used, phallocentric, I feel like much of activism inherently, tries ends up becoming the very thing it was supposed to dismantle. Like, for example, if you take feminism, it was supposed to dismantle the patriarchy, right? But now it's all the same things that happened in the patriarchy, which is that you go girl, you got a slay queen, and so it's all the scoring thing, but sort of repackaged in terms that feminism usually would accept. But at the end of the day, it's still about the same scarcity mindset that there's not enough to go around, and we need to climb the ladder, and women can climb the ladder better than men. So it's like there was this thing that they're inherently devaluing what women would do in traditional roles, and having the choice to climb the corporate ladder is that's perfectly normal. But when it becomes like this, when it becomes when it comes with this undertone of devaluing what women naturally did, and sort of devaluing those like the roles of motherhood, or the roles that women played whilst in the one half of humanity that is considered as femininity, they're sort of devaluing that and saying that, oh no, we should be more masculine and climb the corporate ladder. And I think that so it's all coming from the same fundamental wound, which is that anything that is soft, anything that is nurturing, anything that doesn't align with a sort of authoritarian way of leading people, in which you're sort of you're a boss bitch, or you're sort of leading people and being like very firm and firm and assertive with them. And I think it all comes back down to the thing that it's the same old story, that you shouldn't be a snowflake, but repackaged in a different form. And I think that's what's so. One of the things that I really liked about a particular feminist movement, that was the 4B movement in South Korea. They were like, we just don't, we're setting boundaries, we don't want to marry anymore. Like, women were saying that, right? That, because under the current sort of it's expected that the women do so and so, play so and so roles in their relationship to men, and we're tired of that and we're not going to do it. I found that to be much more healthier than the rhetoric that no, women should enter the workforce, which they should, but it's not like that's like they've associated their identity with entering the workforce, rather than seeing themselves as human beings with both masculine and feminine, and like their shadows. So it comes down to not being able to integrate their shadows with their lighter side.
Yeah. I like what Vandana Shiva writes about. She's a really awesome writer who discusses this, that what was considered work changed after colonialism, and that a lot of what is considered nurturing, caretaking, tending to the community was work and is work, but that was warped and altered to fit a patriarchal worldview. And so I'm going to connect that to Jacques Lacan, who talks so much about lack. And he argues that we always feel lack, we always want something, and we're always pursuing the phallus. But the phallus
Yeah.
is not the literal genitals. It means power, agency,
Yeah.
dignity, and subjectivity, your sense of self, ego integrity, and that we're always pursuing the phallus And when the worldview changed to alter that home care, whether it was done by a man or a woman, nurturing, whether it was done by a man or a woman, or child rearing or community tending to, had inherent dignity placed onto it, it was changed to view pursuing financial independence, corporate hierarchical goals as the phallus. And so that lack, I would argue, is also manufactured to be
Yeah,
scarcity
yeah,
minded.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
so, and if that lack is scarce, I'm sorry, if that lack is always there and the phallus is always scarce, then just it makes sense why women would be like wants to also be seen as quote unquote equals to men because are men equal number one, but also that men's work, masculine work, is the only masculine work in capitalism is the only way women can be seen as having dignity and as having the phallus and having power, because what
yes,
it means to have power and be seen as legibly having it within the social arena of meaning, because if we're talking about meaning again, is to pursue the corporate ladder.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
it
yeah.
was
So it's
changed, and
like,
that's what Van Donna would argue. It got molded by the colonialism.
okay,
So
okay, okay,
moving
okay,
from
okay. Let me
matrilineal
connect.
societies to patriarchal ones. Yeah.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Because when we moved from matrilineal societies to patriarchal societies, last names became important. Property ownership became important. Um, we moved also from polyamorous relationships to monogamous relationships, and so the family unit, which is used so much to control women's desires, women's autonomy, women's agency, was also scaffolded and I would say shaped and pruned to control them. And so it's only recently that like things like the 4B movement, where they have money, they don't need us one bit, and because we men have been beset by like centerfold syndrome, we have like the emotional intelligence of a bag of potato chips, and so we're not really able to keep up because we won't look at our shadows and see how we have been pursuing the phallus and destroying each other, and how we've been such that loop for so long that individuating for us has been harder than it has been for others.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's all about at the end of the day. So here's the way that I see it. Masculinity and femininity as gender roles evolved. They evolved to somehow play a part in the in the social order, right? Not just the pecking order, but the way that things are organized in society. And the only sort of validation that men got were from institutions. Like if they're competent and if they're hardworking and if they're doing the work that they're supposed to as men, that's something that's expected of them. That they get the praise from institutions. Or yeah, you're a real man, or a real man would do so and so and so. But I feel like women didn't have the same sort of institutions that were validating them on the same level. That yeah, you're a good mother. You're mothering them, or you're being nurturing in a way that is genuinely praiseworthy. Because they did not have those institutions. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the stories we tell ourselves, right? Power resides where we think it resides. But if men are the only ones being congratulated for doing what they're supposed to be doing and women are not, then women will naturally think that they must do what men are doing to then be praised. It's basically the sense of belonging that women felt was only in within the institution of marriage, and that too was taken for granted, I suppose. And because they felt this void in their life of institutional validation, did they then sort of drift towards what men were doing and then calling them out that, okay, why are institutions not validating women? They're not letting women get into them and work the same way that men do. So I think we enter this age where there's this emergent phenomena where people are misattributing what they truly want from life and what they truly want from society to something that they think will provide them with the validation that they very much needed. Every human being needs that kind of validation, but because women were sort of severed from this particular thing of institutional validation, like, okay, you're a real man, you're putting in the work, you're earning the money, great, good. But the same sort of thing doesn't apply to women. And that's why I think we've ended up in this society where capitalism is able to sort of milk things out from this scarcity mindset. Oh, okay, we will only be celebrated once we join the workforce.
Right.
Does that make sense, by the way?
It does, and I want to add that a lot of women were in positions of power within matriarchal society, indigenous societies.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
were calling the shots. And power was not seen as only within a who produces the most kind of framework, because even that worldview, who produces the most, goes back to like grades. Who is the most, who's earning the most, who's getting the most. And I think what the point I want to make is I like the idea that if we were to move beyond a capitalistic mindset, is that your value, and this was true within indigenous matriarchal societies, your value is not tied to how much bread you're bringing home or how much you're making. Your value is innate. And if your
yes,
value is innate, it's not tied to production.
yes,
And that's like and I like combining that kind of idea, because then it's not about position or power. It's about there's more abundance mindset, and then you're not really fighting for these, squabbling for power as much, and then the
yes,
lack goes down. And if we combine that with like Marxian feminism, then I think that inherently challenges the idea of gender roles and workers.
So there's a lot. Okay, so there's a lot going on here, which is that you're saying that there. No, no, no. I'm just sort of trying to recount what you said. You're saying that we definitely do have frameworks which can restore dignity just for existing, and that's
Yes.
what we ideally want, right?
Yes.
Because once you're existing because you think you deserve to exist, that's it, and you don't have to do anything extraordinary to earn that. Like this the same way that feminism is going, like, no, 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 we need to be in the workforce. That's what will give us the validation that we've been missing out on. If you start doing the thing where you're like, okay, my worth is inherent, and now all I need to do is be creative. I think that's where a lot of problems do come from, is not being creative, not being able to choose what it is that you want to practice your craft in, and instead following someone else to do things that they think should be done, which is again another form of the same institutional sort of systemic drive to do what you're told to do rather than doing what you want to do. And I think that's
It
where
doesn't feel
all
good
the
though.
problems are coming from.
We're going back to submitting to a team or organization that can tell me what my
Yeah,
destiny should be, because it feels good to
exactly.
submit.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
like we're going to smash the patriarchy by becoming a part of the patriarchy. I think that's where we've sort of stalled on the feminist movement.
There's different ways of feminism and different sects and different, not every branch agrees with the other. Radical
Yeah,
feminism,
yeah.
intersectional feminism, Marxist feminism, and womanism, and I think for me, what I really resonate with is that idea that our value is innate, because that really challenges what Marx was talking about, is like, being connected to what I produce, my value already, and my contribution to society, and how that is really part of my soul's work and individuation work, and where I feel I can contribute authentically as opposed to just fitting into the molds that are laid out. Because those cookie cutter molds
Yes.
that are laid out, they're easy, but they're like the McDonald's of of destinies.
Yes. Yes, yes, that's exactly it. But I think then in that case, I think the problem is that the wrong varieties of feminism is being accepted into pop feminism. So pop feminism is all has become all about the same set of cycles again, that you're sort of, this sort of need to validate other women. Yeah, you go girl, slay queen, smash the patriarchy. And so it's the rhetoric that really has, it might not be intended as such, but
It
that's the
that it
rhetoric that
reiterates patriarchy,
has
you're
played
saying?
out.
You're saying it reiterates
Yes,
patriarchy. Ah,
yes,
I
yes.
think, yeah, that's tricky. That's an interesting concept. And I know there's other groups that'd be like, you're just reiterating capitalism.
Yeah.
And it's nuanced. And I like a lot of indigenous feminism for that because it does bring up matriarchal, matrilineal societies, and which can bring up more of that how the most marginalized of people can share their point of view, and
So one of the things that I'm thinking of, it's on a slight tangent, by the way. So one of the things that I'm thinking of is what we're really lacking is a marketplace where everyone, regardless of their demographics, gets to sell what they're really good at and be validated for the same. Because we're right now we're stuck in this uh, of a market that doesn't equally give everyone the opportunity to do what they're good at doing. It just gives the opportunity uh, to do what's conventionally associated with the demographics of the people. Does that make sense?
it does.
So, yeah,
But I wonder what is a
yes.
market?
Oh, basically where you're transacting value, you're building something, and you're like, okay, okay. Here, I'll start from step one. Step one is that men and women have been in these gender roles, stuck in these gender roles for ages, and men go out and transact their whatever physical work or mental work for money. They bring the money back to home, and women are transacting their value, like they're building the home, they're nurturing the kids. So that's what they're transacting, and then they're being sort of rewarded for being in a relationship, right? Does that make sense? And but what we really need is a marketplace where, regardless of your sex or gender, you're being able to sell exactly what you want to sell and contribute to society, which doesn't have any bearing on your gender or your sex or any of the other 9 billion parameters that humans are discriminated against or differentiated on the basis of. Does that make sense?
It does, and I just wonder, my understanding is there's enough resources for everyone already. Why does it have to be sales and buys and highs and
Oh,
lows?
no, no, no. I didn't mean that. No, I didn't mean. No, that's exactly what I mean. I think that there are enough resources, and that's why everyone should be able to trade what they want
They
to
want.
for money. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Meaning that they're able to produce the things that they want, to be able to sell them on the marketplace and be recognized for what they've contributed rather than what
Right.
society tells them to contribute.
Right.
So
I like the
does that make
idea.
sense? Yeah.
It does. I like the idea of Eisenstein has written about gift economy. Have
Ah,
you?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I've
Gift
heard
economy
about
is
it.
an interesting idea to me. But I think as long as nations and regions compete for natural resources, it's hard for me because I haven't done research this far as what you're bringing up right now to know what could be beyond the scarcity of fight for the natural resource as it is now. But I hear you. I hear you. But that now, I have no problem
Okay,
saying you're reaching the edge of my limits.
no, that's fine.
I
No,
like
no,
that.
let me rephrase it. I mean, it's quite probable that I wasn't able to explain it in the best of terms. Let me rephrase it. All the problems that anyone faces is being recognized, being externally validated by the society for exactly who they are, regardless of their demographic information. I mean, we can say that. Would you agree that that's basically the problem that feminism sought to resolve? That
You know,
we that
I don't know enough to say,
Okay,
but
okay,
it's I think as long as people have, and this is interesting because it speaks to if people's natural resources, I'm sorry, if people's basic needs are met, food, shelter, access to, and there's no classes, and if that was universal, more than that, if their psychological needs are also met, belonging, safety, camaraderie, family, within a polyamorous um, society that didn't really see property, then I can begin to flirt with the ideas that you're broaching.
yes, yes,
Then I
yes,
can be
yes,
like,
yes. No,
okay,
that's
maybe, yeah.
yeah.
That's like, that's like I'd have to use a lot of imagination, but yeah, I can wonder about that out loud in a
No,
thought
I
experiment.
agree with that. No, no, I agree with what you're saying. That's just a couple of steps ahead of what we were discussing before. Basically, I'm saying that
Yeah,
once your primal needs are taken care of, food, shelter, belonging, and whatnot, right? Once they are taken care of, you'd want ideally. Okay, so I think this comes from self-determination theory that you need three things to be a healthy, functioning, like healthy emotionally, mature adult in society. You need autonomy, you need belonging, and you need competence. So the feeling that you're being able to act in alignment with your values rather than what someone else dictates you to, so that's autonomy. You've
right.
got belonging, that you're being accepted for the things that you do, not for the things you do, but for who you are, and you're being accepted in society for the values that you have and basically everything that is unique about you. And the third is competence, that you're competent at doing the things that
That you
you
want to
want
do
to. So be Yeah,
authentically.
that you want to do. Authentically, yes. So the marketplace thing is basically resolves at the end of the day. I think I'm rambling a bit too much.
It's
I'm
okay.
not fully awake right now. But yeah, okay. So the fundamental problem that we have in society is that women are seen as women, not as human beings who are contributing something to society. Does that make sense? Yeah,
It
and
is
and, and men are
autonomy.
the same. Yeah, yeah, great. And so instead of that, women want to be seen as individual human beings, not as women. So if you're being seen as an individual capable of contributing to society on your own terms, not on the terms that society tells you to contribute, then you'll definitely have a better life, right? And the entire thing about having inherent self-worth, that's like assumed at the baseline. And that's on top of that, we build the marketplace where you're like, okay, now I can contribute to society on my own terms, regardless of my gender, and and be accepted by society for it. Because at the end of the day, acceptance from society comes in the form of external validation, and money is the closest thing that's tied to external validation. Your relationship with money is the same as your relationship with external validation. If you think you must perform to get external validation, then you would think that you have to perform and not be yourself in order to make a living.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's
basically
fine.
what I was trying to say. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that sounds good.
Oh, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm not fully awake, and that's why I've been
No,
very,
no,
very
yeah, that
rusty
makes
and
sense.
beat.
Then it wouldn't truly be a traditional marketplace. It would just be more of a venue of meeting of minds.
Yes, yes, in which they are
Gotcha.
able to transact value. Yeah,
Right, and but the value wouldn't be the traditional value as we see it now.
Exactly.
That's inherently
Exactly.
objectifying.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we can we can start wrapping things up. If
Okay.
you have anything to say, please go on.
No, I think we touched a lot of topics. I'm excited for the publication of the new paper. Um, I'll share with you a copy when it's ready.
Yeah.
Be curious your thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'll definitely go through the paper. Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's a good time to close it. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
Yeah.